The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
The press and others consistently shout out that vaccines are safe and effective. They are vaccinate your family. We all vaccinated our families. Everybody sitting here, bar two, vaccinated their families with catastrophic results. Over 12,000 signatures on those two buses of death, death, death. When will enough be enough? How many more buses? How many more children killed? How many more injured adults? And here's a question for you, the senators. Who is going to look after our children when we, the parents, are no longer around? That can't use a toilet, that will never date. All those things Dr. Hooker said. Our children are trapped at 29, 30 years old. They will never pay taxes. They need 24-hour care because of one vaccine, one moment in time. This is a national crisis that must be addressed. Good morning, everybody. It's Monday, June the 15th, 2026, and we're live here at CHD TV. Well, who indeed is going to look after our children when we, the parents, are no longer around? Well, my guest this morning is Andy Wakefield, and you may ask, why is he my guest on this topic? Well, let's find out. Morning, Andy.
Good morning, Paul. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, it's our pleasure. So, Andy, you've been through it, the rung of it. You've just, every single way, shape and form, hammered for standing up for our children. And now you write this book. It's a fictional book. I've read it and it's brilliant. I cannot recommend it enough to our viewers. It's called The Bequest. And it's very moving. It's funny in areas, but it brings up the most important subject, Andy, is who is going to look after our children? Why'd you do it?
Well, that's the issue, Paul, isn't it? The issue of causation is well underway, and even though it's frustratingly slow for so many of us, I think it will be resolved. I think in the end, the market will win, and the consumers, in this case, the parents, will say no. But this is an issue that has to be dealt with. It's a crisis. What happens to these children when their parents are no longer around? And this started very interestingly years and years ago. Around 2011, I was at a conference, and the mother who organized the conference had a severely affected child, nonverbal. And over dinner that night, she asked me if I would father a child for her. Now, you may think, what a very strange request, but she wasn't interested in sex with Andy Wakefield. What she wanted, and her reasons were most sincere and inspiring, was she wanted to have a healthy child who could grow up to look after her son when she became infirm or died. It was not only sincere, it was extremely moving. And I thought in that moment, I've got to write this as a screenplay. It is such an extraordinary story. And I wanted to do two things in this story. And one was to take it away from the vexed and complex issue of causation. I wanted to focus specifically on this issue that keeps millions of American parents, millions of parents around the world awake every night. What happens to my child when I'm gone? Because the world doesn't understand them and certainly doesn't love them, doesn't care for them. They will die on the street. That has got to change, and that has to be addressed. So that was the first thing. The second thing, I wanted to put it in an environment, and it's a Western. I wanted to put it in an environment which was one of the harshest you could imagine. Disease, death, famine, murder, Native American attacks, and so I set it on the Oregon Trail in 1867, and it's a story of a mother's love and survival or not in those circumstances.
Yeah, and Andy, it's actually really clever that you did that, because if you'd put it in today's era and mentioned vaccines, then that the trolls would have been all over it. So you've specifically kept it. So it's about the topic of where are these kids going to go? And most of them are not kids anymore. They're adults we're dealing with.
Absolutely. It's a huge problem. It's going to bankrupt a country. Here's the situation at the moment, Paul, and you know this only too well. It usually falls to the siblings the healthy siblings of children, just as this book posits, to look after these individuals when the parents are no longer around. But their life is then taken away from them. The healthy individuals are taken out of the workplace, taken out of society to look after their, as you said, 24/7, to look after their affected siblings. So the attrition for a population, the attrition for an economy is absolutely massive for this condition. And so something needs to be done, and needs to be done now, and attention needs to be brought to it. And what we've found, you and I have found, and those who work with us, is bringing it into the media, bringing it into the form of a book or a movie, in this case, hopefully both. Then a lot of people will read, be entertained, but become familiar with this issue and want to see a change, want to do something about it.
Yeah, and so we've talked about this issue in the past, but I'm so glad that you're bringing it up again. But it's not so for the people with Asperger's and high functioning autism. This is not a subject for you, because I know what they're going to do. They're going to write in and say, "Well, fine, thank you very much. We don't need to be trapped in one of your centres." But we're talking, the boy in your book is severe. He's what we would describe as a severe child with autism, and you weave in almost the spellers type situation. The boy starts typing out what he wants, and that's fascinating as well, and super important.
Yeah, it was this was intriguing years ago, in the days of Defeat Autism Now, if you remember those, and Bernie Rimland. I met a child in Northern California, and this was when I knew nothing about autism. I was really just learning, and this little boy would write poetry. He wrote me poems, and he wrote this extremely funny. He was nonverbal, profoundly autistic by all criteria. And here he was using a letterboard, typing this extraordinary poetry. He wrote me a poem about my attack by Brian Deere, the journalist working with the Sunday Times in England, called "Who's That Monkey on Your Back?" Okay, so I presented this child to someone at the meeting who I thought was open to understanding. This was a breakthrough. This child was actually brilliant. He wasn't retarded in any way whatsoever, other than he did not have the capacity for fine motor actions in speech. He couldn't speak, so he found other ways of doing it, but he could type. And of course, this chap was furious with me. He said, "This is a scam. It's the girl who's his minder who is doing this. She's moving his elbow." Absolute nonsense. Not only was he failing to take into account what was actually happening, but he was failing to take into account that this idiosyncratic language this boy was typing required that he had investigated the case against me. The girl, the minder, didn't give two hoots about what happened to me. She didn't know who I was. So he completely missed the point. And I think that quite independently, J.B. Hanley and his son have brought attention to this. Spellers has come along. I think this is a huge breakthrough in our understanding of just how clever and how potentially contributory these individuals can be. I was astonished by that, and it opens up a whole new arena of understanding what is going in the complex minds of these individuals.
So, Andy, I don't want to give too much of the book away to our people, but you do touch on another part, which is tragic. And we've witnessed this before. I remember in England, a mother coming up to me, she's a lawyer, and she said to me, at one point, we're going to go through our life with this child who's very severe. And at some point, either my husband or I, and we haven't decided yet, will take our lives with our child, because we cannot leave this child in society with it being so cruel. And that was very hard to hear. But since that time, many years ago, many other parents have quietly said the same thing, that they will not leave their child in this world. They will not let their child suffer any more in the world the way it is now, with no preparation for our kids, and apart from 4-point restraints and psych wards, which nobody wants for their child. But you do touch on that as well, the desperation, the fear of leaving our children behind. And for those listening, we're not for 1 second advocating that you do this. This is not the way to go.
No, quite the opposite. But you're absolutely right. One of the first exposures I had to autism way back when I was in England was just this: a mother and her child jumping from the Houndskill Viaduct in the north of England to their deaths for that very reason, that she could not leave him upon the mercy of a world that didn't care and didn't love him. And that has got to change. It's not only is it, this is not advocating anyway for harm to children. This has got to change. The pressure has got to be taken off these parents. Resources have got to be provided. But people have to acknowledge the problem first off, and that's the purpose of this book.
But nobody wants to acknowledge it. We've tried. I mean, in England, I met 2 prime ministers over this, and they were just basically, it's not our problem. But it is everybody's problem. And it is, because if you don't have a child with autism, your kid who has not got autism will end up being a carer for those, unless they get rid of them. And this is a horrible conversation. I know. I've had many conversations with parents about this, but it's not sustainable. It's going to bankrupt everything with these adults with autism.
Yes, I think there's going to be, these two things are going to come together. Causation, once it's widely accepted that, and this is increasingly the case, that man has done this. We have created this situation largely through vaccination policy, that there has to be accountability. There has to be, they have to assume the blame, the responsibility for this. And when that time comes, then they're going to need to put the resources in to put things right, or to go as far as they can to put things right.
And Andy, you've seen countless children with autism over the years. And I think one of the big problems people don't understand is that a lot of our children are in pain with gut issues and stuff. So when you see a child slamming its head against the wall or just being physically violent, they're often in huge pain. And Mary and I recently covered a story which is happening right now today. They are still giving electric shock treatment to children and adults with autism when they do exactly that. But just talk for a second, if you don't mind, about what you've seen over the years with our children.
Well, yes, one of the things that parents brought to our attention, which was dismissed completely by the doctors and nurses who were supposedly experts in autism, is that my child is in pain. I know he's in pain. He can't speak. He's lost the ability to speak, to express himself. But as his mother, I know he's in pain. And this is part of the constellation of a mother's insight into what is wrong with her child that is not shared by anyone else to the same degree. And so mothers know, and they said, my child is in pain. When we treated the child's inflammatory bowel disease and removed the inflammation, took away the source of the pain, in many cases, then their behavior changed. They no longer manifest these pain responses. And that was a fascinating insight into the origins of this particular behavior, the head banging, the self-injury, the posturing with leaning on pieces of furniture for hours a day, the alternating constipation and diarrhea, the bloating, all of these things were associated with an underlying inflammatory bowel disease.
Andy, you have self-published this book. Now, you could have taken a big publishing deal or done what most people do, but you decided not to do that. Why?
Simplicity, really. It's a sort of hybrid of publishing and self-publishing that Amazon do now. It's very reasonable, and it gives you access to getting the book out there far and wide. And that was the priority. So I wanted to cut through the red tape, the pages and pages of contract, and just get the book out there as quickly as possible.
Did you, writing that book though, Andy, did you get quite emotional? Because it's a very sad story. And also you must have reflected on all your work over the years. And to actually put it into writing, it must have been quite a tough one.
It was. That's why I had to write the funny bits, Pauls. I had to slip in a little bit of occasional humor just to keep it light. You have to do this, and particularly in screenwriting, you have to give, even in the darkest, direst stories, you've got to give people a moment of humor, to let the pressure off. And so but I just felt compelled. It was something that had to be written. As I say, I want to make the film. And this was an unusual way of doing it, that my assistant came to me and said, look, Hollywood's in a parlous state at the moment. There's no money. Write this as a book. Get it out there and get attention to it. And I thought, damn, I know she's right. So I sat down and wrote the book, and here we are now. I'm hoping still, and we will make the film.
Yeah, so if there's any people out there with money, because it takes a lot to make a film, this is not a documentary, this is a film, please do contact Andy. Now, how do they contact you?
They contact me at, let me read it here, info@wakefieldmediagroup.com. And on the 26th, Pauls, when the book comes out, there is a book release party, 10 o'clock on Instagram at Andrew J. Wakefield. So please break off from the show, your show briefly, to come to the launch party, 10 o'clock on June the 26th, live on Instagram at Andrew J. Wakefield. But any emails, any queries to info@wakefieldmediagroup.com. And please go to the website, thebequest.co.co, thebequest.co.
So you go, if you want to order the book, an advance order, thebequest.co.
You can't advance order it. It's only for sale as of the 26th.
Okay, so you can't order it in advance. So everybody on the 26th, well, we'll remember that because on the 26th, Lou will remember this. We will tell everybody on CHGTV, go and get your book. What if we want a signed copy? Or is that not a problem?
Then write to info@wakefieldmediagroup.com.
Okay, so do that as well. And just one more thing on, it was a little bit confusing what you said on Instagram. So on Instagram, we all go over there at 10 o'clock.
On June the 26th for a live release party for the book.
10 o'clock Eastern time or Central time?
10 o'clock Central time.
So 10 o'clock Central, that's fine. So after the morning show, everybody. So we go over then to your thing and it's live there.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're free. We're giving stuff away and the usual razzmatazz. I won't be singing any songs, but apart from that.
Would definitely be there. So to the people listening, this is a really important book. It's really good. As a mother of an adult with autism, it was a joy to read. And Andy, more than anything else, I am so grateful, I know other mothers are as well, that you're even talking about this subject. And so thank you for what you've done for our children and now what you're about to do, which is bring up the subject as where are they going to go when we're not around? And I'm afraid of that. And I've built something for my son because people are unkind out there. So we've got to change the whole narrative on our adults with autism. But Andy, I just think about our friend Michelle Guppy and her son, Brandon, who has seizures all day. Lovely young man, but incredibly difficult. And there's so many Brandons out there. Like, what are we going to build for these people?
Yeah. On the one hand, it's got to stop, and on the other hand, we've got to be accountable for the damage done and put it right to the extent that we can.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go, but before you go, so everybody knows where to get the book, and we all know to go over to Instagram, and we will on the 26th. We will talk about that more, Andy. But just quickly, you did tell me before we came live that you did watch Duty to Disobey. And I want to know.
Yes.
Duty
to Disobey. And I was going to say I loved it. I found it deeply disturbing, very troubling. But there needs to be accountability. What needs to follow on from this great film is accountability of those who forced people in the military to break the rules, to go against their conscience, to break the law. And it's got to be done.
Well, thank you. So to everybody, you've got till June the 30th. On June the 30th, we are in 130 theatres around the country. Please go and get your tickets now. Go to dutytodisobeyfilm.com. Andy, I know everybody's going to get the book and we'll remind them when it's out. Thank you for all the work you're doing. And we hope to have you back on again to tell us how it's going.
Thanks so much, Paul. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. So now we're going to talk about data centers. Good morning to my next guest, Razi and Berry. Thank you for being on this morning.
Thank you so much, Polly. I really appreciate your willingness to have a conversation about data centers. There's so much talk about the data centers with regard to water use and land use, but not enough conversations about going forward responsibly with regard to how these technologies, and they are numerous, impact human health. And so I'm really glad to be here.
Well, thank you. So what actually are they putting into the air, water, and soil around these? Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, absolutely. So for 21 years, I've published case reports of doctors, naturopathic doctors, integrative doctors, functional medicine doctors who pay attention to the environmental impact. And data centers pretty much touch every single aspect of pollution. And I hope we can go into them. There's light pollution, vibroacoustic pollution, the water pollution from the toxins that we'll talk about, and also the RF and the EMF technology. So it is just hitting our families, our children, our wildlife, our pollinators, our land, our water, our soil in every direction. So maybe we could talk about one that is not talked about very often, and that is the low frequency sound that is constantly generated, not only from the electrical generation from these, but also the backup diesel generators that they use, and also the coolant systems, Polly. So when we measure in human health sound, they only typically pay attention to how it affects hearing, but acoustics impact your body at a cellular level. We sort of forget that biology and physiology isn't just the chemical transduction between cells, but it's also mechanical. And what these low wave sounds that you can't hear, they're below 20 decibels, well, they impact the body because our organs resonate at about 8 to 12 decibels. So even that old adage that what you can't hear doesn't hurt you is not true at all. And so research from back in the 80s in Portugal, they were measuring the health impacts from aviation techs, so mechanics, etc. And they found that there was this proliferation of collagen and elastin, and erratic proliferation of this in cells and organs. And these mechanics were having coronary artery hardening. They were having fibrosis in their lungs, but their blood tests were absolutely fine. And so that is one really big problem. Your body is so wise. When, if you touch something hot, it's not just that it feels bad, it's a signal that it's harmful. Well, same with noise that maybe you can't hear, but you just sense the vibration. People in these communities will find themselves feeling very annoyed. And when you have these feelings, it's sort of a warning to your body. So indeed, it does impact the mechanical transduction between cells. It's causing fibrosis of many different organs. And the way they measure it is they filter out the sound that we can't hear, and they only think about the sound of the noise, maybe as a public nuisance. So this is something that I really want everyone to start thinking about and talking about when they're discussing data centers in their communities. I think infrasound and low vibrational noise is something we absolutely need to talk about.
And what made you pick this as something that you were going to go and campaign about? Why did you choose this subject?
Well, I've spent a lot of my life doing little campaigns, from pesticides in our local communities and things like that. But I just felt like this is something that needed a voice, because again, our vibroacoustic pollution doesn't just impact your ears. It's this trope about our health, that our body is segmented into these little parts that don't connect to each other. And sound impacts your whole body, your whole physiology. So it's just one aspect of the data centers that I've been wanting to talk about. And of course, sometimes I'm accused of being anti-technology. I'm not at all. But just like at Children's Health Defense, we want to look at the precautionary principle. We want to go forward trying to think about these questions before it's too late, before the damage is already done.
So everyone I've spoken to does not want data centers. They're horrified by them, but that's the world I live in. But there clearly are people who think it's a great idea. What are they being sold by mainstream media to think that this is a good idea?
Well, they're being sold on the fact that we can do more, better, faster. It's being sold to us that, we won't have to work as hard. It's being sold to that we're going to, beat our enemies in understanding of technology. But that's really what the media is telling us. Most people that I speak to don't really feel like AI is helping them in their daily lives as much as they were sort of told it would. Now, there's a lot of amazing opportunity, I think, that's coming on with technologies like AI, but it goes really past AI. There's these data centers are being used in so many different ways. The data is not just about AI, it's also about the Wi-Fi that we're using right now, right? The technologies that we're using right now. But we aren't thinking about the impact. I mean, the light is another aspect, Polly, the light pollution. Melanopsin is a hormone in our body that regulates melatonin. And so we don't have very dark skies anymore. And it's 73% increase of breast cancer risk when you don't have a dark night, and a 50% increased risk of prostate cancer when you don't have a dark night. And so for people that don't understand how does light impact human health, think about how marijuana growers use light to modulate the amount of THC, for instance, in the marijuana. Well, these data centers emit constant LED, very bright LED lights 24/7. And there is a glow people are complaining about. They're taking pictures and posting them online, showing this glow of light at night. And this does impact human health in many ways. And you can't just simply cover your eyes, because your skin has other opsins, such as neuropsin, that detect light even when your eyes are closed. It's a very powerful hormone mediator. And here's what most people don't know. Melatonin is not just for sleep. It is our body's master antioxidant. So that's one of the reasons why you heal when you're sleeping. So it's another endocrine hormone disruption, and it's another implication of these data centers.
Now, okay, being an adult is one thing, but what about the kids, the babies that live near these data centers? I mean, I feel like it's just another autism explosion about to happen, and death. I mean, it's like these things are going to kill us, without sounding too dramatic.
Yes. And so, yes, our generation was not as exposed to these technologies. And you're absolutely right, Polly. It's just devastating. It's just it's another assault on top of another assault on human development. I mean, you need a dark night when you're pregnant so your babies can properly develop, children as their nervous system is developed. Tract, often people with vibroacoustic disease, some of their first symptoms are digestive, and these don't show up in blood tests. So you're absolutely right. That's why I'm so passionate. I'm a mother, you're a mother, most people listening are. And if you're not, you have children that you care about in our future generations. So I think it's really unfortunate that people who have concerns about data centers are just being told to be quiet, or that they're anti-technology, and nothing can be further from the truth. But we want honest conversations about technology so we can get all the smart people that are smarter than I to get together and find ways to solve these problems, so we don't have crisis after crisis after crisis. I mean, just the power lines, it's well established that children that live near power lines have within 300 meters, have a 5-time increase in lymphoproliferative disorders like lymphoma. And these power lines are being built near these data centers as well, where your children grow, where our pets roam. And it's really just an attack on every issue. And I've been getting a lot of hate online from talking about these issues, because so many people are excited about the tech or about the wealth that might come. But do we want to be the leader in technology, but the losers in human health?
Now, once they're built, I guess it's hard to fight for that. But how do you know if they're planning on building one near you, so you can get in there and protest and fight back?
Yeah, that is a really great question. You have to be involved locally. That's really the only way, because it's not going to always be on the local news until it's too late. You have to get involved locally in your community, in your local politics. Even you should just plug your nose and get involved, attend meetings, because if you don't, I'll give you an example. I'm not a member of my HOA, and my HOA started cutting down huge trees, huge 50-year-old trees where owls live, where pollinators thrive. And many of us started complaining, but because we weren't part of the HOA and we weren't there when they had some like meeting that the rest of the community wasn't told that we were going to be meeting about this, you can't rely on others to inform you. And of course, places like my journal, the Journal of Applied Natural Medicine, or Children's Health Defense are places we can get this news, but you have to get involved locally.
And has anyone actually achieved getting rid of one? Has anyone achieved fighting against these data centers? We're all talking about it now, but
I don't know what the long-term outcome will be, but there's been a few wins in some communities, but there's a lot of money, there's a lot of power. And so, politicians that are voting or approving these things need to hear from parents and neighbors. Talk to your neighbors, talk to them about these issues. Some people are going to care about the sound. Some people are going to care about the light. Some people are going to care about the water. Some people are going to care about the land. So if you know all of the different issues, then you can connect with somebody in one way, and then it'll empower them and kind of motivate them to want to get involved.
Now, you have written a book, correct?
Well, I have an ebook, actually. It's about advocating for yourself. It's called Is It Time to Fire Your Doctor? And it's just a fun download. It's free, that you can empower yourself on how to talk to your doctor, how to create your own healthcare team that really advocates for you and listens to you, what questions to ask, and what to do, how to change your healthcare team when maybe you feel like you aren't being listened to.
So not about data centers, the book?
It's not about data centers, no.
So where do people go if they want to learn more about these data centers and get involved? Do you have somewhere for them to go?
Well, where my resource is more about the human, health impact of the technology of data centers. But I have written some articles that you can find at the Journal of Applied Natural Medicine. That's at ndnr.com. And we have 21 years of cases written by physicians, naturopathic doctors, functional medicine doctors, that you can search all 21 years for any health issue that's important to you. But we really have a focus on environmental health.
Okay, and what do you recommend the average person do? So they're listening to you, they're horrified by what they're hearing, but they don't know what to do about it. What would you do?
I think that you have to get involved locally to your city council meetings, your town council meetings. Think about being a precinct committeeman, so you can be kind of local in your neighborhood. I wish there was like an easy answer or a one-stop shop place to go, but every community is different, and you just have to add that. I know we're so overwhelmed with so many things to do, and then stay involved. Places like here, Children's Health Defense, to find out what's happening. Resources like mine, ndnr.com, because when you can share facts with people about the human health impacts, some people care more about their pets, their cats, their dogs, which this impacts them very much as well. Then you can sort of know it's just going to be one person at a time, Polly. It's just, we are greater in numbers.
Yes, we are. Well, look, thank you so much for being on this morning and sounding the alarm. Do keep speaking out about this, and do come back on CHD TV if you have any more information, because, education is, your kind of education is absolutely knowledge, and knowledge is key. So thank you so much for your time.
It's been my absolute honor to be with you this morning.
Okay, well, now everybody, we're going to go to Malissa. So Malissa, good morning.
Good morning, Polly.
Thank you for being here. So to our viewers, just so you know, I was on Instagram and I saw she had a reel on there, and it moved me so much that I wrote to her and asked her to come on, because your story is tragic. So let's go back, because just so everybody knows, Malissa lost her sister and her brother, and we're going to be talking about psychotropic drugs. So, Malissa, why don't you walk us through why your family was even on these things in the first place, antidepressants and benzos?
Yeah, so this is my 5 siblings, including myself in there, and we were actually all on different drugs. My sister that was on the far right, she did a preventative cancer screening test, and that test showed that she had a chance of getting breast cancer. And the doctor's solution to that was to prescribe a preventative cancer drug called tamoxifen. And that drug went on to cause a blood clot and a brain aneurysm, and she passed away at age 49, leaving 2 boys behind. My brother, that was right on the left of me, he had gotten a divorce in 2024, and I think actually earlier than that. And he was dealing with insomnia, was then given sleeping pills, which is either a benzodiazepine, a Z drug, or perhaps antipsychotic. It's a psychotropic drug. And within a year, he took his life. And when I work with a lot of spiritualists, shamans, and intuitives, and there's many of them that I trust, and I went to one of them and I asked, "Hey, what was the cause of my brother's death? Was the drug had anything to do with the passing?" And she channeled him, and he came through and said, "I had these thoughts before, but it was the drugs that led me to my death." And including my own story, I would definitely say I lost my life. I mean, you may see me in a vessel in physical form, but I absolutely lost my life to antidepressants and benzodiazepines. I was originally, so to kind of bring you back before I was prescribed, I had just gotten married. I was in the best shape of my life. I was an amateur Muay Thai boxer training 6 days of the week. I traveled the world. I was a top performer at work. I definitely was in my prime. And then 3 months after my wedding, I suffered a concussion. And that concussion is what pushed me through the medical system. A few months after the concussion, I started to deal with insomnia. And the insomnia actually was brought on because I had a vestibular relapse. So I started to deal with dizziness all of a sudden from a lot of stress. And my body went into a sympathetic nervous system response, which is essentially the fight or flight response. And just like any animal, you become alert, you stop sleeping. Well, I didn't understand this, and the doctor didn't understand this. So I went to the doctor. Her solution was to prescribe me 2 antidepressants, an SSRI and an SNRI. Despite zero history of depression, I barely knew what anxiety was. I skydived, bungee jumped, not exactly an anxious profile. But I was prescribed these 2 drugs. And those 2 drugs went on to cause what I now know as serotonin syndrome. Initially, what was happening is after a few weeks of being on the drugs, I started experiencing severe anxiety. It almost felt like, imagine Eminem in your mind rapping 120 miles an hour, and I could not stop it. And accompanied with that, I felt this urge to move a lot. I now know that this is called akathisia. Akathisia is a nervous system dysregulation, often caused by chemicals. So it's synthetic. This is a synthetic condition. And it's often accompanied by inner terror, suicidal ideation, but doctors are not educated on what akathisia is. Like most people will experience akathisia in some form on these drugs, yet doctors have no idea and they're misdiagnosing it. Well, anyway, I'm dealing with akathisia. I start to develop POTS. My heart rate is, when I go laying down to sitting, it would jump over 200 beats, and then it would plummet and I would lose consciousness. And I was also experiencing psychosis. And when I went to the doctor, I was told that it was the brain injury, it was a new mental health disorder, and I was told it was also a pre-existing condition. For example, the going unconscious piece, I had told the doctor I had fainted once a decade ago, and because I took out my nose piercing and I lost consciousness because of that, and they said, "Oh, it's a pre-existing condition." And so at that point, I didn't have anyone that believed me. And what I really want to mention here is that these psychotropic drugs, they spellbind you. So the issue is you go on these drugs, the mechanism of action, they alter your consciousness. They're altering the brainstem, the thalamus, the parts of your brain that are responsible for consciousness. And so when you're on them, you believe you're the problem. You believe it's you, not the drug. And then you have a medical system behind you and in front of you reminding you it's you. And so being on them, I was so spellbound that I believed it was me. And then there was a part of me that was questioning it. So I was going back and forth. And anyway, as I went on in this journey, eventually I decided to come off these drugs. It took me a couple months to taper without the support of my doctor. They told me I could taper fast, 25% every week. That's not true for majority of people. This is how you're left with something called protracted injury or neurological injury for many. And when I came off the drugs, that is what happened to me. I was left with a protracted injury. It is a neurological injury. It is a nervous system injury. I had all of the symptoms I had described, but now I started to develop new symptoms, symptoms of PTSD. And instead of acknowledging the neurological injury that the drugs had caused, I was then diagnosed with PTSD. And that is what led me to benzodiazepines. And I'll stop there to see if you have any questions before we get into the benzo story.
Well, actually, Melissa, I just want to say you speak so well on this, and thank you for doing this. I do want to ask you about informed consent. Did at any point any doctor say to you, by the way, these things may happen when you're on these drugs?
I am so happy you asked this question. Absolutely not. I'll tell you what informed consent I received. And I had asked, are there any dangers to these drugs? This is the day I was prescribed the 2 antidepressants. And I was told these drugs are completely safe. You may have a little less libido, and it is easy to come off. All 3 statements are false. First off, 80% of people on antidepressants have some form of sexual dysfunction. That doesn't count for the people that are left with PSSD, post-SSRI sexual dysfunction. This falls under a protracted injury. These are people that have anhedonia, emotional anesthesia, and complete dysfunction of their lower body parts, right? These are people that can't have an orgasm, that can't have an erection. And this can last years, if not decades, if not longer. And this is after coming off the drug. And there is zero informed consent that I received, and I have yet to meet people that are receiving informed consent.
It's just horrific. All right, so those are all of that is just antidepressants. We haven't even started with the benzos. What are benzos? I don't even know what they are.
Yeah, so you'll know what they are once I share. I didn't even know what a benzo was. I didn't even know that's what I was prescribed. So a benzo is it's a sedative. It could be an anti-anxiety drug. It could be used as a muscle relaxant. And the common names for these drugs that you probably would know is Ativan, Klonopin, Xanax, Valium. All of these are benzos, and they're extremely potent drugs that bind powerfully to the GABA receptor. I mean, these drugs were meant to be used very short term, yet you have doctors prescribing them for decades. I mean, if you look at the drug insert for both benzos and antidepressant, the clinical research on them, we're talking about 8 weeks. Antidepressants, 12 weeks. That's the clinical research that was submitted to the FDA to get these drugs approved. We do not have long-term studies on these drugs. Maybe a 2-year meta-analysis on antidepressants, but if you look even at that study, who's sponsoring those studies behind it? Who's ghostwriting these studies? That's the reality. There's no efficient, I'm all about science. I would love science, but there's no science. There's just marketing. That's the problem.
And Melissa, I hear that the doctors actually get bonuses for prescribing these drugs to people, which is a massive conflict of interest.
A massive conflict of interest. And it obviously, I don't know where that is today with specifically benzos. I mean, this is a drug from the 50s, and antidepressants, I'm sure even newer antidepressants, there's incentive, but it's more than that. They know that once you go on one of these drugs, you are a client for life because it is so difficult to come off these drugs. Now, know that protracted injury, so what I'm referring to for benzos, it happens to it happens to 1 in 6 people. It is believed to even happen to more. And antidepressants, a protracted injury is believed to happen to 1 in 10. And this is when you have 1 in 4 Americans on these drugs, that is millions of people. And what's happening is that these doctors are misdiagnosing it with, oh, it's your pre-existing condition. Oh, you have a new mental health disorder. Oh, this is a new autoimmune, or you have MS or Lou Gehrig's. I mean, the amount of people that are being misdiagnosed, it's an epidemic we're in. And this is the problem. And then I think the saddest part of this is like what that does to an individual soul, to like have it turn back on you, and they convince you you're broken. Doctors convince you you are broken, and how that internalizes and what that does to the soul, I can't explain it because I know I was there for a very long time.
And Melissa, sadly, when I saw that, or the drugs that come under benzos, a lot of those are what they give to our children with autism who can't speak and tell us the pain or whatever's going through their mind. So thank you for bringing that up. So what do people do? So, I mean, I feel like I want to tell people stay away from doctors. They're going to, if you're feeling sad, they're going to give you drugs, which could potentially kill you.
Oh, personally, absolutely. Like I would go down a natural route. I would be looking at, look at your trauma that could be a manifestation of your symptoms. I'm someone that now understands fully that the body, these symptoms, depression, anxiety, I mean, this is your body's brilliant ability to tell you something is going on. It's saying, hey, I have something to tell you, right? Any symptom. And so instead of going to a doctor that all they're going to do is numb you, and it can come with extreme side effects and you may even lose your life, why don't you start reverse engineering and see how you got to that moment in time, right? And I think it's working with functional doctors, working with, doing EMDR, CBT. There's, other type of trauma work, somatic work, shadow work. I mean, there's so many other directions. Diet. I mean, diet is so powerful. I'm someone that is paleo. That's where I've seen a lot of my healing coming from, as well as doing the inner work to understand how did I get to this moment in time, right? From a higher perspective, but just diet. I mean, there's studies that show, changing of diet, going carnivore, keto, or paleo, this is resolving people's mental health, symptoms. Why is that not the first place we're starting versus putting a chemical, neurotoxins in someone's body? We are what we put in our body, people. And I had to learn the hard way. I mean, I lost my life to these drugs. Like as I sit here, and I know we didn't talk so much about my journey through benzos, but as I sit here, the room is spinning. My spine feels like it's collapsing. And I have still akathisia where I feel like I'm being chased by lions that want to rip off my limbs. That is just 3 of my many symptoms that I still experience years after being off benzos. I am 4.5 years off of benzos, and this is where I still am today. And I cannot walk more than an hour a day, right? So I say this from someone who has lost their lives to chemicals and handing my reverence to doctors. We need to stop handing our reverence and we need to take it back.
Oh, Melissa, you should be up on the stage talking worldwide about this subject. You are brilliant. Lou, can you just put that picture up again of her family? I just want to, for people to know that this is what psychotropic drugs have done to Melissa's family. I'm sure that photo's good. There you go. So the lady on the right with a red dress is your sister, and the man on the left is your brother with the tie, pink tie.
Yes, that's my twin brother in the pink tie. My brother is right on the left of me in the blue tie. That's my oldest brother.
And he died?
Yes, he died. And he would have been 58 this month. It was actually his birthday this month.
So you've lost a brother and a sister. And what about your parents? They must be devastated.
I mean, I think losing one child is unimaginable. Now, imagine losing 3, because even though, again, I'm sitting here, my parents lost me. I mean, I spoke through this whole journey. I've been fighting for my life. I've spoken to my dad once when my brother passed away. I mean, and speaking to you is easier because this gives me purpose. This gives me, this allows me to keep going, something to stay alive for, right? Unless someone is a part of my survival, I'm not talking to them. And so my parents, and what my father has endured, I can't imagine what that is like. How do you live with that? I'm sure every day he questions his life, I don't know how a parent goes through that. I know the devastation as losing siblings, and I know the devastation of losing your own life.
Malissa, as awful as it is that you've been through this absolutely awful time, thank you for sounding the alarm about these drugs. It's for a purpose, and that is you. I can tell you this right now. I spotted you on Instagram. You have a gift, a very important gift, and you need to use that to go out to the world and warn them about the dangers of these drugs. So, Malissa, you have to keep going. You are extremely talented, and you are here for a reason.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I mean, for me, this is what keeps me going, is purpose and advocacy, build awareness. I mean, it's at this point, I put all ego aside. It's so much bigger than me. So I will do whatever it takes. I post a lot of videos online about showing what did I look like going through this, crying, screaming, all of the symptoms. I show it, I advocate, I educate, and it's to build this awareness because doctors are not doing it. So someone has to do it. We need to do it from the ground up because we're not changing the system the other way. It has to happen from the ground up. And then once we change, they will be forced to change.
Yeah, Malissa, so I follow you on Instagram, so I highly recommend all our viewers go ahead and follow that. So you're on Instagram. I saw TikTok come up there and YouTube.
Yes, on YouTube, I have a podcast. That's right.
The Face of Malpractice. Well, I'm glad you have a podcast because you're, as I said, extremely talented. Malissa, before I let you go, just one thing. My concern for being Children's Health Defence here is the young children being prescribed these drugs. It breaks my heart.
It is. I'm so glad you brought this up. It is. I like when I hear of children being prescribed these mind-altering drugs, antidepressant, it is devastating. You have to understand, these children haven't even developed their brain, right? They're developing their brain around neuroadaptation. These drugs are causing neuroreceptors to adjust. This is the part that doctors don't get. Nothing in the brain works in isolation. They don't understand the mechanism of action. And so now you have children that are developing around this, becoming numb. They don't get to, you don't only get to remove the negative, which is subjective, you remove also what's positive, the happiness, the joy. And you have to understand there is no clinical research on these drugs for being on them for years. And if you're put on these drugs as a child, you're going to be on them for decades, if not forever. And I think this is one of the saddest things. And I think what's really interesting, and I'm glad you brought this up, is to how the amount of children this is causing suicidal ideation. These drugs, like little children, they're not able to metabolize these drugs like adults, and even adults are not able to really metabolize these drugs. And so we see very high suicidal rates in children that are being prescribed these drugs. I mean, let me tell you my own experience as an adult. When I was put on benzodiazepines, I was not only suicidal. I mean, I remember I wanted to hang myself from the ceiling, drown myself in the pool. I wanted to get in the car, close the car, and just put the car on and die. But outside of that, I also became homicidal. I wanted to murder my own mother. I remember looking outside the window and seeing a mother care for her child, and I remember wanting to strangle them until I saw blood come out of their mouth. I mean, if you saw the photo of me at my wedding, my question to you is, do I look like someone that's suicidal there or homicidal?
Wow, Malissa.
No, I wasn't. I didn't even know what depression was. And here I was, and I lived in Florida at the time. And let me tell you, Florida, you have easy access to weapons. And I found myself stockpiling. I was going to go to war with the world or with myself. And it was all chemically induced by the psych drugs.
Malissa, listen, thank you so much for what you're doing. It is hugely important warning us about these ghastly drugs that are dangerous beyond understanding. Malissa, I want everyone to follow you. And Malissa, please come back on CHGTV if you have any more that you want to talk about. You always have a space here to talk about this. And we're so grateful to you. And we're so sorry about your sister, your brother, and what happened to you. Awful. So sorry.
Thank you so much, Polly. I really appreciate being here today. Thank you.
Malissa, thank you. Okay, everyone, we're going to go down now to our People Study Story of the Day. What's your name, please?
Rhonda Easterly.
And you took 2 Moderna COVID shots.
Yes.
Why did you think taking a COVID shot was a good idea?
I work in the worked in healthcare in a nursing home, And at that time, it was in February, March of 2021, and everything was just so, you know, just scary. And the nursing home that I worked in, they pushed it, the administrator had pushed it, and I just had COVID 2 months prior to that.
So you had COVID before, so therefore didn't you not think you'd be immune? So
Yes, I argued that point to the director of nursing that prior to the vaccine, and we went back and forth.
What was she saying? What kind of stuff?
She kept saying, no, I don't think you have to have it, because, I think you're supposed to wait 6 months. I said, okay then, but she kept going back and forth with the administrator, says you have to have it. And at that time, our rehab staff, we were contracted, and she treated us differently then. So I went ahead and took it.
So you took the first Moderna shot, and how did you feel after that?
I missed 2 days of work. I was in the bed sick with the Moderna. A month later, I took the second one, and it was the same thing. Then that was in February. March was the second one. Then in April, I started out with rashes, and just feeling very tired or fatigued. And I went to the dermatologist, and they did a skin punch biopsy, and then it came back that I had lupus. They told me I had lupus, and then I started seeing a rheumatologist in this area. I was not getting any better. The rashes were getting worse, and I went to visit him one day, and I wanted him to look at the rashes, and he wouldn't. And he said, you just need to go back to the dermatologist. And I just finally, and the next time I went back to him, he says, I don't know what else to do for you. I said, well, I keep getting worse. I'm feeling worse. The rashes are getting worse. And that's when he just kind of threw his hands up. And I said, well, could you get me a referral? And he said, where do you want to go? So I said, Vanderbilt. So went to Vanderbilt. It took me about 4.5 more months to get in to see that doctor. So by that time, my rashes were horrid. They were everywhere.
Do you have pictures of them?
Yes, I do.
We'll look at those later.
Yes, they were horrid. And that rheumatologist there at Vanderbilt, he took one look at me. He said, you don't have lupus. I can tell you that by looking at your rashes. You have dermatomyositis.
What's that?
It is, it's called myositis. There's different subtypes under myositis. My means muscle, itis means inflammation. And there's dermatomyositis, polymyositis, inclusion body myositis. There's several, but it's very rare. Say, for instance, there is 4 ALS cases, and there's 1 myositis case to each 4 of those. So sometimes it's about 9 per million that are diagnosed per year with this. So it's very rare.
So are you connecting that to the Moderna shots?
Yes, absolutely.
And did you file it in the adverse reporting system?
I'm trying to think back. I think that I did. My memory has also affected my memory sometimes too with this.
So are you getting help for this?
Yes. I'm still having trouble with treatments. I'm not responding that well, but I did have to quit work. I had a 34-year career. I was planning on retiring at the retirement age, but I was not able to, so I had to quit work the last of May of last year, May the 28th or something like that of 2023. So I haven't worked 8 months. So this has been very hard for me when I was a workaholic and
Yeah,
did patient care.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Did you speak to Moderna?
No, I haven't.
Has this changed your mind on vaccinations, all of them?
Yes, I have a phobia now. I've not taken a flu shot. I've not taken any vaccines since this.
And when you walk around the outside of this bus, what are you thinking as you see all the vaccines with all the injuries?
I can sympathize with them. I know what they are, going through, and so I can sympathize. And I have, tried to speak to a lot of, people about my injury, and a lot of them just have no idea.
awful.
About it.
I'm so sorry.
That's-
I'm alive as well. Sorry, everybody. Oh dear. So what advice do you give other people?
I tell them, it is a personal decision, but this is my story. This is what happened to me. And for them to think about it before they do take the vaccine, any vaccines. Especially the Moderna.
All of them, actually.
Or all of them, actually, yes.
Is there anything else you want to add to that?
I just want to add to my struggles with this, diagnosis. I got to the point back in April and May that I could not get up from a chair, up and down stairs. Could not hold my hair dryer to dry my hair, and still yet I have trouble lifting my arms to 90 degrees. I have just a lot of pain in the muscles, stiffness, weakness. Some days it's just debilitating. But I go for, I take infusions with a medication called Rituxan. I did the IVIG infusions prior, and I've taken immunosuppressants, and they just make me ill. So I'm struggling with trying to find the right concoction, I guess.
Have you met the doctors here?
No, but I'm going to.
Yeah, Dr. Sibley, you definitely need to meet.
Yes.
Let's go and get you connected with her. Thank you for telling your story.
Okay.
I'm so sorry I ruined it.
46% of the American people say mandates are dangerous, they're damaging, and vaccine science isn't settled.
A steady decline of childhood vaccine rates.
Vaccination rates continued to decline last year.
There's a discourse about vaccines that didn't exist before.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense is the leader in the health freedom movement.
The Department of Health and Human Services is overhauling the immunization schedule, now only recommending 11.
We are making recommendations that are science-based, that are common sense.
Secretary Hegseth, discarding the mandatory flu vaccine requirement.
Your body, your faith, and your convictions are not negotiable.
People recognize you have to be able to make an individualized decision.
For the first time, the U.S. FDA will acknowledge that COVID-19 vaccines killed American children.
States are putting in place medical freedom laws. There's bills in Congress that Children's Health Defense is supporting, the GRACE Act for the right to religious exemptions, the End the Vaccine Carve-Out, ending liability protection, and Tom Massey's bill to repeal the PrEP Act.
One of the most aggressive medical accountability lawsuits in decades.
Suing the American Academy of Pediatrics.
CHD is suing under RICO laws, claiming that the AAP operates as a criminal enterprise and has for decades.
A federal judge yesterday blocked Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s recent overhaul of the nation's childhood vaccine schedule.
They basically just froze all vaccine policy.
The American Academy of Pediatrics and other medical groups filed a lawsuit arguing the vaccine changes violated federal law.
Which is outrageous for a single judge sitting in Boston to stop any work at the Centers for Disease Control related to vaccines.
This conflict between medical freedom and medical coercion, it's a fundamental conflict that we must resolve now in favor of medical freedom or forever be truly slaves to medical tyranny.
I am so glad that there are people like you who are still fighting this.
Children's Health Defense. If you don't know what they do, folks, look it up.
We have got to, as a society, global, decide, is medical coercion okay, or do you have a right to decide what happens to your body?
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.